lot of fun, and it's just the vibe of the show, right? And so I'm very stoked. So why don't we go ahead and get this started? Welcome everyone to Dark Loops today with the Lasso Crew, where we discuss season 2 of Apple Plus series Ted Lasso. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher from Illinois State University. And tonight we discuss episode 1, Goodbye, Earl. So, fellow members of the Lasso Crew, please say hello to the audience and tell them who you are, and we will start with Kerri.
My name is Kerri Morris, and I teach rhetoric and writing courses at Governor State University near Chicago, Illinois.
Fantastic. Tatsu, how about you?
Hi, Tatsuya Shigeta. I'm a PhD student at Northeastern University, and I also work as a customer success rep at a company called Our Studio.
Awesome. How about you, Montien?
Hi, I'm Montien Miller. I am a registered nurse and an IT analyst by profession, but I am also a TV and movie enthusiast.
Oh, fantastic. We're so glad you're here. How about you, Tom?
Hello, I'm Tom Buller. I'm a professor of philosophy at Illinois State University.
Outstanding. So what we're going to do here is we all watched episode 1. I asked everyone to come up with their favorite scene, favorite line, favorite character. We'll go through one of those at least for each of us and spread the love. So we will start with Tatsu. Tatsu, favorite line, favorite character, favorite scene, pick one.
Well, Scott, football is life, but football is also death.
Totally.
And football is also football, right?
Man, that's so fantastic.
I love this episode and how they've carried on. But I also love that they're going to start kind of expressing and digging into other characters a little bit more, which is expected. So I love that. I love that line. But in terms of scenes and favorite character, I mean, this episode's all about Roy Kent, right? What is Roy Kent doing? But favorite scene definitely has to be the double date and Roy's. I don't want to steal somebody's line if that's their line.
No,
but
go ahead.
I love that.
Fun.
Yeah, I love that scene. Roy just he knows what he wants. Well, he doesn't know what he wants, but he does know what he likes, what he doesn't like. What he doesn't like is people selling themselves short, and that definitely came through.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's great because Roy comes off as this tough guy, doesn't take any shit, and but he also doesn't take your shit if you're selling yourself short. Don't let anybody tell you any different. You deserve, I forget what he said, but it was great. I love that scene. I don't know if
I think
anybody
he said something like, you should only go out with someone who makes you feel like you were struck by lightning or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyone want to respond to Tatsu?
I just got a kick out of the when he asked the dates what he supports, and he says, "Oh, United or City, depending on who's winning." It's just like you don't understand football, do you?
No, particularly English football, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's just such a stupid thing to say.
Absolutely. How about you, Montien?
I like that same scene, but for different reasons, because I like how Keely was responding to him. She just went into like this active listening, supportive kind of role. And then when he realized what was going on, he just says, "Thank you. I love you."
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that was just too sweet.
It was very sweet. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool how, they built him up to be the tough guy. We saw some soft moments come out last year. He speaks his mind, and then he drops his bomb when he tells her don't settle for fine. It caught me off guard, and it did what it was supposed to. It surprised me, and it was just hilarious. How about you, Tom? Got a favorite line, favorite scene, favorite character in there?
No, not really.
Don't do this to us, man.
No, I don't really have anything favorite about the show. I was going to put some sugar into my tea, but I've had enough saccharin for one evening. But I did like the line in the
Well, if you like the line, why all this and don't?
one line was, "What position does your mum play on the team?" I thought that was very good.
Yeah.
But,
With Nate?
Say it again, love.
With Nate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Nate. And then, you know, we went through all the sentimental tropes. We had a dog injured. We had cute kids. We had Roy getting sentimental. But I think my favorite line was, "Wow, we're watching the end of someone's career." And I think that applies to the entire show.
Man, I was going to make yellow cards and red cards for this, you know. I mean, this doesn't disqualify you from showing up next time, but we definitely have to push back. I mean, you're totally right, man. There is a certain level of sentimentality that runs through the whole thing. At the same time, I would say the acting, the comedy is top notch enough for me to buy into it. And what I really dug about them bringing on Dr. Sharon Fieldstone was that she's a really cool narrative check against Ted's sort of, you know, folksy psychology. Here's an expert. And I think it's good. I think it was a good writing idea to bring an expert in this thing to the table so that, you know, it doesn't go too far on the folksy edge, right? There are people who do this for a living. And her deadpan was just awesome. She didn't give him any space anywhere at all to feel good about himself.
I love the beard saying, "Well, this is going to be fun."
I absolutely loved it. My favorite scene was the yoga reality TV show scene. I thought, this is so cool. What's Roy doing with these ladies? Well, you know, they're doing yoga. Oh, and then they're drinking wine and watching reality TV show. And who's there but Jamie taught. So I just thought it was hilarious as hell. And I really liked his reaction. And pour me some more of that rosé.
Well, I think the show is so well written. It just blows my mind every time. And so from the get-go, one of the lines is at the very beginning with the announcers. One announcer says, "Can you imagine a season starting with so many ties?" And the other guy says, "Yes, I can. But it's because I'm a right brain dominant with a knack for make-believe."
That was my second in line.
I just love that toss-off phrase. But my favorite quotation, I think, in the whole thing, because I think it carries a little more weight than perhaps people are noticing, is Dr. Sharon Fieldstone to Ted Lasso when she asks him, "Are you good at your job?" And she says, "No, don't look at them. Just tell me, are you good at your job?" And he says, "Well, yeah." And she says, "Well, as good as you are at your job, I'm twice as good at mine." And they're very shocked. And I think that the men in the room maybe missed. And I think the point is, for a woman to have any success in this culture, she's got to be twice as good at her job as men. Meanwhile, she's observing these grown men playing a game that children would play. And then she asks them, you know, "What's your record?" And then they tell her, they have the number, and she just looks at them like, you know, "You're worthless. You're just worth nothing." But the other thing I wanted to say about this episode, I disagree that it's sentimental. And I think my main reason for that is the Magnolia references. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Magnolia or have seen it. It's one of my favorite movies. If you have seen Magnolia, definitely see it. But it is not a pick-me-up. So there are several references to it, but the really powerful one is Becca is breaking up with the asshole that she's dating. And in the background, Amy Mann's song is playing Wise Up. And that song plays a pivotal role in the movie Magnolia. At one point, every character is singing that song. And it's a story about abuse and the harm that we do to children. I mean, it's really dark stuff. And the lyrics to the song that we hear when she's thinking about breaking up is, it's not going to stop till you wise up. So you might as well give up. I mean, it's really dark stuff, Magnolia and Amy Mann. And I think we are going to see Ted Lasso unpeel a little bit this season. I think that we're going to see Fieldstone really open him up and let us see what's inside, because I don't think he's being very honest about what's going on. I think he's being a bit dishonest. So, but that was my favorite scene.
Go ahead, Montien.
That's what I absolutely love about him, though, because even though, I mean, he comes off very optimistic and upbeat and, you know, glass half full, he still is dealing with a lot of deep trauma, personal trauma that he hasn't really tapped into. And I think the first time we see that is when he, in season 1, when he has that panic attack, and then Rebecca kind of pulls him out of it, because I think that's the first time where we really see him losing it and start to unravel. But I just feel like this particular show came at a time when we were all dealing with our own personal demons. I mean, we were on lockdown. It was a lot going on. It was a lot of uncertainty. And I know I was dealing with my own personal family crises. It just gave me some hope in the midst of all the uncertainty and all of the negativity that was going on, and gave us a chance to laugh. But I mean, at the same time, there's still some things we have to deal with. So I think as they begin to tell his story through the therapist, well, she's a psychologist, through the psychologist, and through really us getting to know these characters more, we'll start to peel back some of those layers and take off some of those masks.
I think that's fantastic. I think, well, first of all, Sudeikis definitely has the acting chops to pull off a deconstruction. I mean, that, like the scene you mentioned last season, for me was probably the most profound scene in the series, where the veneer crashes through, he can't manage, and you see what happens. And I love the idea of a middle-aged American Midwest white guy being kind of deconstructed, and not in a mean or bad way, but just, you know, dealing with his own plight. And are there things that this optimism glosses over that may be keeping him from engaging other types of people in the world? I think that I would not be surprised if that's what happens. I hadn't thought of it that way, and I'm really glad you said it, because I trust that they would do it well.
At the very beginning,
Go ahead.
is he gives us kind of some expectations about what's gonna happen when he tells the Hank the dog story about being bitten by the dog, and he's afraid of the dog, and then the dog is abandoned, and so he has to take care of it. And he ends by saying, it's funny to think about the things in your life that can make you cry, just knowing they exist. And then they become the same thing that make you cry, knowing that they're now gone. I think those things come into our lives to help get us from one place to a better one. And I think his relationship with his wife is still unsolved. I mean, he tells us he feels like the therapist blamed him for everything. And I just think there's a lot going on that he's going to have to own up to. I mean, why he's abandoned his family to go to England, to sport he knows nothing about, you know, for just a starter.
I mean, go ahead.
I feel like this, yeah. I feel like season 2 is going to, it's going to kind of wreck your expectations, right? Like, you expect Ted to always be a positive person that, you know, is always, you know, taking care of other people, putting other people before himself, whatever. I think at the same time, you might see a juxtaposition of, while Ted's getting deconstructed, you might actually be surprised at how empowered and okay with himself Roy Kent actually is.
Uh-huh.
I think that's definitely going to be I think that they're definitely going to do that, because you're starting to like see things that Roy does to kind of like maintain his self and his sanity, and actually they're kind of healthy.
Uh-huh.
You know,
yes.
as opposed to like his exterior. Actually, you know, he has friends, you know, and he keeps them as close as he wants to, and you know, he has a healthy relationship with his girlfriend, where you know he's going to go off and watch reality TV with these ladies, but hey, I'll be home afterwards. You know?
Do you
Yeah.
think we're going to get to see the retirement speech?
I hope we get to see the retirement.
Yeah, I really do.
I mean, I thought, did I miss something? I went back to look at the end of season 1 because I was like, I can't remember this speech.
Yeah. No, they're going to drop it on us, you know, episode 5 or 6, when we're kind of, you know, they're making us expect it now. I got to tell you what, this show came off as such pure joy. You didn't care if it was saccharine, right? You just loved the sugar last year. You just, oh my God, I can just sit there. I got to tell you guys, I watched this show, this first season, 3 times, twice with my 23-year-old daughter. And she would come over. She doesn't live in town. She'd come over and we would sit and watch the whole series, you know, in one evening. It's just such a fantastic arc. And it's also this wonderful way, full of joy, to draw people in to do The Empire Strikes Back, right? To do Act 2, to then deconstruct this sugar, to look at what really makes that sugar have to be there or want to be there. And that is a huge cultural accomplishment, to get people in who may not want to watch The Empire Strikes Back, you know, but are going to watch it now. And they're going to see a certain type of person deconstructed and analyzed. And I think that's just healthy for where we are right now. So I'm stoked.
I think that they set themselves up for a real challenge narratively, because in the first season, they have all the conflict you could possibly want. You've got secrets, you've got the American versus British thing going on, you know, you've got all sorts of cultural stuff happening. But this season, they're all okay with each other. You know, they know each other. They all love each other. And I just think at the beginning of this season, I mean, that sets up a problem for them, because you can't have a season where everyone loves each other. Something's got to happen to, you know, set this up. And I think that you're really given some very strong clues about what's going to happen when it starts off with a dog being killed by a ball, you know. I mean, this is not your ordinary kind of beginning to a comedy. You know, you don't kill the pet.
So I'm a bad person if I just laugh my ass off. I thought it was hilarious. And, you know, the weird thing about it is they open the show with that. All right. And then within 3 minutes, he's given that line. You said it's funny to think about things in your life. So like within 3 minutes, we get this, you know, episode 7, Ted Lasso soliloquy at the beginning of season 2.
Exactly.
Just like a reestablish, you know, his folksyism, I guess, and our being charmed by it. And yeah, I think you're right. They put themselves on the spot. And I think Dr. Fieldstone is gonna be the fulcrum for the change in the crew. I think she's just gonna bring a level of expertise, first of all, and then live life and expertise to this bizarre world of Premier League. So they're not playing Premier League. It's championship soccer, but
One of the funny things that I really liked was, you know, all this darkness around Danny having, you know, murdered this dog. And, you know, he introduces himself to the therapist as, you know, how are you doing? I'm a murderer, you know, which is just a great opening line for your therapist, you know. But I love that he has this dream and he kills the cartoon dog, and the blood goes all over his face, and he wakes up screaming, football is death, and on either side of him is a woman.
They just let that happen, by the way, right? There was no explanation. You just
It's like, yeah, you're taking this really seriously. I can tell.
no. Yeah. I
He was
really
working out his pain.
I really hope they spend some time with him in Shieldstone, because I think through her we'll hear a deeper story about him, because they really need to tell a deeper story of him, more than just football is life. It was charming. Football is death is the opposite. It's charming. At the same time, they've got to give him a little more depth. If at least I think they do. If I'm going to keep thinking,
Well, I mean, it's just the first episode, Scott, and they already gave him 3 more layers because there's life, death, and football. So I think it's possible.
By the way, I love that.
I think these writers are too clever to just leave him at that.
And I would not be surprised if there's this wonderful. You guys, we knew you'd love the sugar. Yeah, we didn't call Tom to talk about this. And we called it that before we got him involved. But we got you guys this big bowl of sugar so that you'd come back and we could teach you something. I really think they've set us up well to, like I said, maybe watch something that we wouldn't have watched at first blush.
So you expect season 2 to develop a kind of arc that's gritty and painful?
Oh, well, they told me they called Scorsese, to get some advice. So I suspect we're going to get Taxi Driver or something along those lines.
Are you serious?
No, not serious at all. First of all, I didn't think about the thing you guys said about, deconstructing Lasso. And then when you said it, it's like, well, of course, this not just of course, but this is a big thing that's going on right now. Disney and Marvel are doing this with almost every series they put out. And what a lot of people don't realize about the MCU was the very first movie was Iron Man. And who was he? He was a white billionaire. And what they do, they deconstructed the hell out of him for 20 some movies to the end where he dies. He's done. And now there's a different kind of hero in place. So,
going back to Montien's point, I mean, the success of the show is, as you said, what we've all been through. So won't the show lose that 1 ounce of amusement it has if it starts to become more equivocal in its emotional tone?
More equivocal than its emotional tone. I'm gonna go with Tatsu on this one, and I'm gonna say that they're too clever for that. I think they're gonna do it, and I mean we're gonna get together and talk about it. The groovy thing for me is that it's so good that enough people watch it to talk about it. I think more and more when people are making these shows, there's just enough money going out there to make this kind of stuff where we talk about it, and that's just a different world than it was 20 years ago. So this part of it. When the Ted Lasso producers, when they call me and ask me if we'll collectively podcast season 3, they will have done so because we carried on the conversation, right? I'm joking again, but what I'm saying is when you can do a bit of art and this is what happens, game on, right? So, if they blow it this season, then, we'll see what happens next. But
I mean, I don't think it's going to be like some dark season. I mean, I think it's going to be the way what they did with Rebecca last season, where they can see this woman and she's got a lot more layers to her,
right.
And Kylie really helps us what's going on with her. And I think Ted Lasso we just take him at his word, and no one really gives him a lot of pushback. And I think he's going to get pushback. I don't think people are just going to take his little truisms and, go out and win football games. I think he's got something to learn here.
Totally. And he's going to be taught by them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to them developing the Nathan character more too, because we started to see him really come out in the first season, the first season. So one of the other comments that I put down here for my favorite line was they had this real serious moment and Nathan is trying to be so profound and he goes, well, pressure makes pearls. And then he realized, no, that's not quite right. And it's just like, yes. So really bringing him out and showing him as not just the kit man, right? But now this coach and then a leader. So I'm looking forward to seeing characters like that really get developed and showcased.
Totally. And I was surprised he was so mean, but that was the point. They're going to work with us as to why he's so mean, maybe a little backstory here and there. And then, you know, it's so funny because you got him and now you got Ted Lasso in the same room. Right. That's just not going to work. And Fieldstone's probably going to end up doing therapy with all of them to, you know, make them all a little more real and come to grips with, you know, a little more than truisms.
So
And then
what-
maybe they can start winning some football games, right? Because at the end, I mean, they still were not playing up to standard. They were still losing or tying and not really performing optimally. So maybe in unpacking all of this, they can show them how to be their best selves collectively.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, when you're tied for the most ties at the beginning of a season, that's pretty cool. I just thought that was clever.
I love that. The record is Southampton and whoever else are tied for the most ties. Yeah.
So are they going to
Unbelievable,
get promoted?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
What was that?
You think they will get promoted?
Oh, absolutely. And then they're going to win the championship in the third season.
So next
I mean,
year,
they've already told you that. They've already told you that's what the plan is.
I mean, I've
I don't
got no
think there's a lot
problem
of mystery.
with a third act. You know, I mean, we're used to it. The issue is the execution, right? If they can continue to deliver, then I'm in, right? Yeah.
I think a better prediction maybe is Jamie Tart on a free transfer back to Richmond City.
Yeah.
That would be
I think
funny.
that's gonna happen.
That
I
would
think that's
create
gonna happen.
Because, you know, we were left last season with him getting chewed out by his dad because he passed the ball in that last game, even though they won. And so I remember, I think Ted walking by the room and making eye contact with, you know, Tart, and Tart knows now that Ted knows who his dad was. So there's stuff there to unpack. And I just love the idea that Ted does the best he can, but a little expertise in the human condition doesn't hurt. Right? And I think that's a really cool way to take it.
But we know that Roy Kent, or should I say Roy Keane,
Yeah.
is going to be a pundit because they've referenced that several. So I'm waiting for the when they're going to get guest appearances, and my money's that he's going to be on a Sky Sports punditry with Roy Keane.
Did Roy Keane end up being a pundit?
Yeah, he is.
Did he cuss everybody out during the broadcast? Go ahead, man.
I just saw a clip of Roy Keane today. This really funny scene where it's the end of the season and last season, and Aston Villa was one of the teams that stayed in the Premier League. They weren't demoted, and they're celebrating in the locker room, and they shoot over to Roy Keane, and he's just like, you know, it's just like, I don't know what they're celebrating about. That's Roy Keane.
Any other lines, scenes, or characters?
Well, I just want to give a shout out to Hamilton. The scene in the pub. Hey, coach, can I get real a second? Give my meal a second. Put down your beer and tell your buddy how you feel a second. You know, it's the George Washington right-hand man. And I was so proud of myself. I've just been going off on a Hamilton soundtrack.
Well,
just
Hamilton
obsession
props to
summer.
Kerri there. That's fantastic. That's awesome.
I like the reference to the Jets.
Yeah, God, that was a great line.
Yeah, I gotta say there was this little line that stuck out, and I actually quoted it to my daughter today, and we both got a laugh out of it. And it was, so Ted, how do you feel about therapy? And he says, yeah, general apprehension and a modest Midwestern skepticism.
I know. Great line.
And it also sets up exactly what you guys are saying is going to happen, right? I mean, okay, yeah, I got this way of being with people that gets them emotionally motivated, and all that happens. At the same time, there's a level of expertise that's missing when it comes to what happens when they're done, we move out, and so that way of describing his relationship to therapy was kind of diagnostic, no pun intended, of his level of expertise when it comes to actually dealing with real problems in people's lives. So,
And then the Beard's comment to him when he says, that he's had this bad relationship with the therapist. And he said, remember what you told me when I broke up with the dancer? All people are different people. And, Ted Lasso's falling into some of the same traps that everyone else does,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, like he wants to always do the right thing, right? But what he wants to do to make sure people are okay and what he's actually feeling are two different things, and that's why he's like, okay, let's do it. He's just shaking his head. I feel like that's said in a nutshell.
So at when the show, I was talking to Kerri about this earlier today. So when the premiere occurred in the UK earlier in the week, Jason Sudeikis wore a shirt that he had made specifically, and on the shirt it says Jaden, Marcus, and Bakayo, and this refers to Jaden Sancho, Marcus Rashford, and Bakayo Saka, who are all England soccer players who all missed penalties in the Euro final, and were all three of them, because they are black, were subject to racist abuse. And so Sudeikis is mentioning them, and putting on this shirt was a sign of support, and many people have now bought the shirt. So do you think, and then whether that issue of race and football is going to come up in season 2, perhaps season 3, and should it come up?
Yes. That would be one of the lines that they can go and should go, since they have the platform,
Absolutely.
and they have the audience. People are watching this. Clearly, Sudeikis is making a statement. I think it would be very clever of them, because this is a show, especially in season 1, that can be light enough, entertaining enough that it captures a wide audience.
Yep.
And maybe you capture the eye of people that need to hear these things. But otherwise, you're expressing your support, you're carrying on the message, and that needs to keep happening. It needs to happen in these sorts of mediums, and I mean, it would only help the show, in my opinion.
I agree.
And
to do it in a non-confrontational way too. So here, and I think that's what the show is really good at. Like, these are the things that we're really dealing with, and yes, we're presenting it in this lighthearted format, but there's an undertone of seriousness to it, and getting us to really look in the mirror, to really do some soul searching, through the laughter. So I love that part about it. And I guess I'm always thinking of it in those terms, and kind of, I think that's why I was able to see that. And then to know that these are some of the things that I'm dealing with in myself as well. you know, how do I deal with the racism that exists in the world, and what are my thoughts about it, and how am I going to kind of teach my children, and how do we teach each other about it? So, and not only that, but interpersonal relationships, and you know, how we deal with loss, how we deal with trauma, how we deal with death. So all of these things are kind of tied into the whole show, but still done in a way that we can kind of sit back and laugh and take it in without it making us overwhelmingly sad or depressed about it. So I mean, the writing is excellent.
No, I love what you just said, because I won't be surprised. I mean, this conversation's fantastic. These are not thoughts that I really had. And I wouldn't be surprised if the race issue comes up and Ted isn't really able to deal with it. And the therapist is the one that has to guide Ted through dealing with it.
He's already intimidated by Fieldstone
Yeah.
because of a particular trait that she has, which I think is really, you know, obviously it's comical, but it's also really important in that she speaks the language of the people who come to see her.
Yes.
So she speaks the native language of Dan and this, you know, native language of each one. And of course, the chances are zero that you would know all those languages. But, you know, she's already meeting these people as human beings in their own culture, as
Yep.
opposed to being excerpted out. And we have a funny Danny Rojas, you know, oh, isn't he funny with the accent and, you know, all of that. So, I mean, Fieldstone's already showing him, you know, his
And
deficiencies in that way.
what's brilliant about that is then Ted Lasso becomes a surrogate for us as she teaches
Absolutely.
him how to deal with the times that we're in now. And people will watch that, as Montien said, because it's approachable. It doesn't feel like it's confrontational. At the same time, the writers know exactly what they're doing. Right. And that's just kudos to them, man. Right. And you know, you build this bowl of sugar and suddenly boom, you're speaking serious stuff. And that's an achievement. And you know, they got the second and third season okayed at the same time. I suspect they had the pitch for those seasons available when they were done with the first. I really do. Now that the way you guys are talking, I get the sense this is a 3-act play. And anyway, that's how I feel. I hope they go that way now.
It'll be fun to see it. I mean, it feels really insecure talking about it after just one episode, you know. I mean, last time we'd seen all the episodes, and so it was easier to, you know, kind of get a feel for what's going on.
Right.
But I mean, who knows what they're going to do.
Well, this conversation is exactly what we're denied when they drop all the episodes at once, right? We don't get to get together and talk about what happened and then simulate what might happen in the future. And look, I'll just say that's a good thing for anybody to sit around and do, is think about what's going to happen in the future as a function of where we are now, and doing it in a way that people enjoy. So we just kind of practice thinking about the future. That's, you know, if you drop them all at once, I can binge it, and I'm happy I ate a bag of potato chips, but I'd rather sit around and do this every week, right? And then see what happens at the end.
Well, I remember when our daughter was little, one of the exercises they had in like 3rd grade was they would give the kids a story, and then the kids to say, what do you think happens next in the story and why? And I think that's kind of, you know, what you're saying is that we're trying to think about that, and that requires a bit more effort, you know, a little bit more engagement with what's going on.
And it also puts your brain in a what if mode than a it is mode. I mean, one of the things, not to get too political, but there's a whole lot of certainty running around in our culture that's very dangerous right now. It's not a what if mode. It is a I know mode. And it prevents people from thinking about the future in certain ways. And so anything that trains us to take advantage of one of our gifts as humans is the ability to ask what if. That's why we were able to keep the fire going, take it to the next place the next night, take it to the next place the next night, because we did what if. So, you know, anything that teaches us that, I'm in.
Do you feel like
Go on,
I
go
was
on.
just I was just
Uh,
gonna say I was just gonna say, do you feel like the writers are out like on purpose? They're ending episodes in a way that allows you that space rather than always ending on a cliffhanger, and all you're thinking about is like you're left to think about that exact thing, like what's gonna happen. It's more so like it happens in a certain way, and it can go in whatever direction. And by releasing a weekly episode, it allows you to have conversation with like-minded people, right? Or not.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. That's when I saw this show was going to come on, I got a hold of you guys instantly. And I said, let's do this. Let's have fun. And, if 90% of what we say is wrong, it doesn't matter because, 95% of what we predict in life is wrong. So let's just, let's just dig on it. Montien, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, and it made me think about the entirety of the whole show and the premise of the whole show. Ted Lasso is an American football coach, right? So he sounded like me in that sense. He knows nothing about football in this sense, and it's totally foreign to him, and he's learning it as he goes. I know nothing about soccer, aka football. I know American football though, and strategies that are used in American football. I love American football. I'm a huge fan. And I like how, because that's the uncertainty, right? The what if. How will this guy who coached American football come into this culture and then learn to actually coach this Premier League team? Can he do it? I think that's why I like that Trent Krim character and the way he comes at him. He's so cynical. I love the scene with the kid on the plane that comes up to him in season 1 as well. It's like, they're gonna murder you. You're crazy to come over here and do that. But it just sets it all up. And the whole thing is like, what if? Is he going to be successful? What's going to happen with Ted Lasso and this team?
I love it.
So,
what were you going to say, Tom?
So in season 1 we had the horrible ex-husband, the kind of foil, the bogeyman, the specter. So who's going to take that role now? In that everybody seems to be on the same side.
I love that question because he was the foil for Ted's folkism last season. In other words, Ted's folky common sense was enough. Oh, and his skill at darts, right? That kind of stuff was good enough to make him the hero. His foil this year is not going to be a jerk. It's going to be expertise. Right. And how does Tim deal with the fact that someone throws psychological darts better than he does? And he knows that he needs them. So I don't think she's going to be the big baddie. But I do think it's the one that's going to force his decisions about who he wants to be and how it's going to force him to change. I don't know. Go ahead, man.
But she's as we've been talking is going to be a kind of moral center and a moral teacher, and we don't have the pantomime villain that we had in season 1, and that's who I'm thinking of. Who's gonna be on the other side of the coin?
Well,
I don't think we met the ex-husband in the first episode, did we? So maybe someone's gonna come along next week.
Roy Keane.
I think.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think it's gonna be. It could go any number of ways. I think that Ted becomes his own worst enemy, and I think that kind of spreads throughout. And I don't think that they're going to make Dr. Fieldstone kind of like the instigator. It's just going to be organic, and therefore Ted's gonna spiral because of that. And I think, I mean, if there's going to be the textbook antagonist, maybe it's maybe it's Jamie Tart. Clearly he's going to play some big role based on the sneak peek at the beginning. Like something's gonna happen with Jamie Tart. So if it's not a free transfer at the end, then I mean it's probably that after he's played the villain. Who knows?
Montien, you look like you want to say something.
Maybe it's Nathan is what I'm thinking.
Well,
I think that's possible.
Yeah, maybe it's Nathan, Nathan who was so unassuming, he didn't even know anybody knew his name. And then all of a sudden now he's coming off, with these little snarky comments. Maybe it's Nathan who kind of busts on the scene and provides that antagonist. Or like you said, it could be somebody else that they bring in.
Well, I think you make a great point there, because I think that he, for so long, he's had to like keep himself like, contained and always like, respond in a certain way and like always basically, kiss the shoe of people that, are his superiors. And I think actually at the heart of it, he's kind of an asshole, and we saw glimpses of that last season,
Right.
and I think maybe that does come out now that he's given the platform. So I think that Tom's going to be rewarded this season.
Now, what I really like about what you just said is last year, at least from what we saw, it was the first time he had been respected in the world of football, right? And what was the change moment? It was when he chewed everybody out in the foulest of ways, right? And suddenly they give him a whistle, they tell him he's coach. He has no experience with leadership. So it's not inconsistent with reality that people that don't have experience with leadership flounder. How do I do this? And sometimes they go into this, I've got to be a hard ass, I've got to lay down the law. And I mean, Ted's doing the opposite. Ted's just very rarely laying down the law. Practice. That's about the closest he came to laying down the law, right? But there's an expertise that needs to be figured out. And I like the idea of this season being devoted to, both of them having to come to develop some expertise in different ways. That would be fun.
Well, maybe this is projection on my part, but I feel like I feel this sort of adult versus child thing going on. And I feel like there's some characters who are the adults in the room. And I feel like Fieldstone is definitely kind of the uber adult. And Rebecca, I mean, that whole thing with her talking about, I've got to be brave, I mean, that's something that an adult. And then in contrast, I just can't really get past that scene, whatever game they're playing, and Fieldstone walks in. And they just look to me when that happens. And little, which is so much part of, I think, the sports thing, is that it kind of infantilizes men in those ways. So I wonder if there's going to be some tension there between who's on the grown-up. Roy seems to be quite a grown-up as well,
That is so cool to see Roy be one of the grown-ups in the room. That would be awesome. It comes in different forms, right?
Absolutely.
They're only 8 years old. You can't call them pricks, even if they are pricks.
Exactly.
That's
Montien, you had wanted to say something?
I was thinking about Rebecca and the way her character has developed too, because she came in wanting to undermine the team and destroy everything as a way to get revenge at her ex-husband. But then, she comes into her own and was like, well, why should I do that? What pleasure would it really give me to do that? And now she's actually an advocate for the team. And like you said, now she's one of the adults in the room. So how is she going to continue to be the adult in the room in the midst of dealing with like the likes of Ted Lasso? And even Higgins, I mean, even Higgins is coming into his own, and finding his voice. So I'm just curious to see how they develop these characters.
And he's a profoundly good comedian. The guy that
Very.
does Higgins. I mean, the whole thing, you can have my desk, and then he's got his laptop on this little end table and the pencils fall. I mean, it's slapstick, but it's brilliant. It's just hilarious.
Oh, a little factoid that I read is, you know, that scene at the very beginning when Ted comes into Rebecca's office and they're all sitting around and he walks in and they all go, Ted. You remember that?
Cheers.
So they're playing on the thing
Yep.
where Norm comes in and they all say Norm.
Mm.
And the actor who played Norm is, I think, Jason Sudeikis's uncle.
No
Something.
way.
So I think it was kind of an homage to his family in that. And that I think is kind of touching as well, because, you know, you want to be where everybody knows your name.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, Magnolia is about profound loneliness and loss. And you've got these bookends,
Exactly.
sort of emotions going on in this particular show. I just found it really kind of moving in a way.
And then when there's that vibe that, we're all in this together, which is kind of where they are now in the championship, and they're all kind of digging on each other. That's a different psychological space than they were all in last year, right? So now they're going to have all the troubles that come with being together, right? Being on the same page.
I think that they're gonna go on a winning run. They're gonna go on a winning run, and it's gonna be because of Dr. Fieldstone and her influence. And Ted's not gonna know how to deal with that.
Not know how to deal.
He should be happy that they're undefeated, they're winning, but he's not going to be, and he's not going to be able to deal with himself.
Yeah, where would his identity come from if she's the one that's responsible for it? Yeah, that's
because he doesn't know a thing about soccer, so it's not
Exactly.
it's not his soccer coaching.
I love it. He's gonna get frozen in carbonite at the end. That's what's gonna happen. I'm sorry, that's a Empire Strikes Back reference. Go ahead, man.
I just gonna say I just love Higgins' delivery. I have to go tell them about Luke and Leia. I have to prepare myself,
I'm sitting here talking Empire Strikes Back. I didn't even connect those dots, but that's exactly the case. We're watching the Empire Strikes Back. Lord have mercy.
He's so relatable.
And it is such a nice little moment.
I'm sorry, I took my my Rebel Force t-shirt off. Now I had that on earlier. I'll wear it next time.
By the way, Montien, what's your dog's name?
Oh, it's two of them, but the one that was in my lap, that's Beau, Beau. He's the lover. That's why he was giving me hugs and things. And then Dude is the other one. And he was sitting on I had to keep muting because they kept either growling or trying to get my attention.
There you go, Dude and Beau.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Luke and Leia, because there's that American phrase about the tie, which is a tie is like kissing your sister. So I just think they're so clever the way they bring everything together,
Yeah. No, they work hard for sure. Any final comments on episode 1 of Ted Lasso season 2?
I think we're just gonna have to keep an eye out for Easter eggs, because they're totally gonna plant those. I don't know, and this is totally random. I don't know if you all noticed that the number, their score on their game of keeping up the paper ball, same number as the amount of times that Roy Kent has sworn.
Exactly.
There's these parallels,
And what is that about?
Who knows? Who knows?
It's got to have something to do with that book he was reading to his niece last year when he realized the story.
Wrinkle in Time.
That is such a great book.
Is it a 4-digit number, by the way? So there's a time then, right? Put a colon between the 2 digits and it's 13, 14, would be 2 o'clock. Okay, we'll do that research for next time.
Was it 1,236?
6. Yeah.
So 12:36.
12:36.
Maybe there's a Bible verse in there or something.
God.
So that about wraps it up for tonight's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Lasso Crew members, please tell the audience where they can find you on social media, and we will start with Kerri.
You can find me on Twitter at Kerri K. Morris.
Excellent. Tom?
You're
The unmuted Tom?
My email is aka.tombuller@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Montien?
I can be found on Twitter at NursePoo2K2.
Fantastic. How about you, Tatsu?
You can find me on Instagram at Tatsushi1892.
Fantastic. You can find me on Twitter at dark_loops. You can find all episodes of the Lasso Crew at the Dark Loops Productions channel on YouTube. If you'd like to leave feedback about this podcast, please do so on this YouTube page or send an email to darkloopsproductions@gmail.com. We'll be sure to read it at the end of our next podcast. So there it is, from all of us to all of you. Big hugs, and remember, football is life. Bye-bye.
Bye.